Welcome to Marvelous French. In today's lesson, we're going to take a look at a clip from an interview with Timothée Chalamet. Timothée Chalamet is an American actor who can be seen in movies such as Call Me By Your Name, Little Women, and Dune. Now, even though Timothée is American, he does speak French because his father is French, and so I assume he spoke French with his dad growing up, and he said that he used to spend his summers in France as a child. Timothée often does interviews in French while promoting his movies, and we're going to take a look at one of his French interviews today. I'll include a link to the complete interview in the description box below, but as usual, today we'll just be looking at a short clip. Just a note, if you decide to watch the whole clip, because Timothée grew up in the States, he does make some mistakes here and there in French related to grammar, gender, etc., but his accent is excellent and he speaks well. His interviews can still be good practice for those of us learning French. So today's clip comes from an interview from 2019 when Timothée was promoting his movie Call Me By Your Name on a French talk show called Quotidien. Here he's responding to a question regarding whether or not fame has changed his life. He says yes and no. Some things have changed, but in other ways, things haven't changed much. And he gives the following as an example.
Je me suis fait virer d'un resto à Los Angeles il y a une semaine.
So he says, Je me suis fait virer d'un resto à Los Angeles il y a une semaine, which we can translate as, I got kicked out of a restaurant in Los Angeles a week ago. So the main verb here is se faire virer, which means to get kicked out. Now, this comes from an expression, se faire, which is the verb faire, put into the reflexive, se faire, and then followed by an infinitive. We can translate this as to have something done to you. Now, when used in this sense, it often has a rather negative connotation and can often be something that happens that is out of our control and that's involuntary. So in this case, it's being used to say that Timothée was kicked out, right? So this is something that happened to him, wasn't in his control, and that wasn't necessarily the most positive of things. Now in English, we can translate this expression oftentimes as to get somethinged or to be somethinged, to get kicked out, to be kicked out. So it does take on a sort of passive meaning. So here are some examples. We have il s'est fait voler. He got robbed. So the verb voler on its own means to rob or to steal, but again, it takes on a passive meaning in this construction. Il s'est fait voler. He got robbed. It's something that happened to him. Here's another example. Ils se sont fait arnaquer. They got conned. So arnaquer is a verb that's rather casual, that's rather familiar, but it means to con, to swindle. And so, ils se sont fait arnaquer again takes on this passive meaning of they got conned. So again, we have an example of a situation where something happens to us that was not under our control and not really something that was desirable. Now, that's how se faire is being used in the sentence that we're looking at today, but there are other possible meanings. So in other contexts, se faire can translate as to have something done or made for you. So faire can mean to do, but also to make. And again, this expression has a sort of passive meaning. So in this case, it's not really something that's involuntary, and it's probably not something negative. It's actually something that you have requested that someone do for you, that someone do on your behalf. So here's an example. Elle s'est fait couper les cheveux. She got her hair cut. She had her hair cut. So she had someone cut her hair. Maybe she went to the beauty salon or what have you. And instead of cutting her own hair, she had someone do it for her. So as we can see in this case, it's absolutely voluntary. She's the one who is having it done, and it's something that's beneficial. Now here's another example. Tu vas te faire une robe. You're going to have a dress made. So here, faire une robe translates as to make a dress. Faire can mean to make. And again, in this construction, it's taking on a passive feel, but it's something that you're having done. So you're not making the dress yourself, but you're going to have someone make it for you. Now, se faire faire doesn't always have to translate as to have something done to you or to have something done for you. Sometimes it really is just expressing things in the passive voice. And in this case, a lot of times we'll just translate it as to be done. So here's an example. Guillaume le Conquérant s'est fait couronner le roi d'Angleterre. William the Conqueror was crowned King of England. So in this case, it's not necessarily that we're trying to say that Guillaume le Conquérant, William the Conqueror, had this negative thing happen to him, or that he had someone do something for him. It's really just another way of expressing that something was done. He was crowned King of England. So this se faire faire can also just have this general passive meaning. Now, if you want to specify by whom a certain action was performed, we're going to use par, P-A-R, which translates as by. So, for example, elle s'est fait couper les cheveux par son ami, which means she had her hair cut by her friend, or she had her friend cut her hair. So, because the friend is the one who cut the hair, we're going to use par. Another example, vous vous êtes fait mordre par un chien. You got bitten by a dog. So the dog is the doer here. The dog is the one who bit you. So we're going to use par. So now let's talk about agreement. So usually if you have a reflexive verb and you're going to put it in the passé composé, the past tense, you need to make sure that the past participle agrees with the subject. So you might need to make it feminine or plural. So here's an example. We have the verb se coucher, which means to go to bed. It's reflexive. If we put it in the past, for example, if we want to say she went to bed early, that gives us elle s'est couchée tôt. So we have our past participle coucher, C-O-U-C-H-E with an accent aigu. But we're needing to add an additional E here so that it agrees with the subject, elle, which is feminine. However, with the expression se faire faire, we don't have to worry about agreement because se faire is followed by an infinitive. So we have an example here. Elle s'est fait engueuler. She got chewed out, she got yelled at, she got reprimanded or scolded. So we have the infinitive engueuler, which means to scold, to reprimand, to chew out. It's a kind of casual way to express that idea. And we're putting this all in the past tense. So, elle s'est fait engueuler. So even though the subject, elle, is feminine, we're not needing to add a letter E to this F-A-I-T. We don't say elle s'est faite, F-A-I-T-E, to make it feminine. We're just going to leave the past participle fait as is. So no agreement needed in the passé composé. So that is se faire faire in a nutshell. Now, the infinitive being used in this expression is virer. Je me suis fait virer. I got kicked out. So virer means to kick out, to throw out, and it is a rather casual way to express this. It's informal. In other contexts, it can mean to fire someone from their job. Now, a more standard way to express the same thing would be jeter, which means to throw, or to throw someone out, to kick someone out. And if you wanted to talk about firing someone, a standard word for that in French is renvoyer. But here, Timothée uses the common, but just kind of casual word virer, to throw out. Now, speaking of which, he also uses the word un resto. Je me suis fait virer d'un resto à Los Angeles. So un resto, R-E-S-T-O, is just a casual way of saying un restaurant. It's short for un restaurant, which of course means a restaurant. So next he says à Los Angeles. Je me suis fait virer d'un resto à Los Angeles. So à Los Angeles means in Los Angeles. So when we want to say in or even to a city, like I'm going to Los Angeles or I'm in Los Angeles, we're going to use the preposition a, which is the letter A with an accent grave. So we have some examples here. Again, in or to Los Angeles would be à Los Angeles. In or to Paris would be à Paris. And in or to Anaheim would be à Anaheim. So it doesn't matter whether our city starts with a consonant or a vowel, we're going to just use the preposition a. Now, on the other hand, when we're dealing with larger geographical locations such as states or provinces, regions, countries, or continents, the rules get a little more complicated. So let's take a quick look at that. So, for example, if our state or country, etc., is masculine singular and starts with a consonant, if we want to say in or to, we're going to use au, which is AU. So here are some examples. We have au Texas, in or to Texas, au Canada, in or to Canada, and au Japon, in or to Japan. So all of these are masculine. We have a masculine state, Texas, and then two masculine countries, Canada and Japan. And in each case, we're using AU, O, because they are masculine, singular, and all start with a consonant. Now, on the other hand, if you have a masculine singular state, country, etc., but it starts with a vowel, for sound reasons, we're going to use en to mean in or to. So, for example, en Alabama is in or to Alabama. En Iraq is in or to Iraq. And en Israel is in or to Israel. So we have Alabama, which is a masculine state, and then we have Iraq and Israel, which are masculine countries. But because these start with vowels, we're going to use en. Now, we're also going to use en if we're dealing with a location that is feminine singular, such as en Californie, which is in or to California, en France, in or to France, and en Afrique, in or to Africa. So we have a feminine state, we have a feminine country, and a feminine continent, and they all take en. And it doesn't matter whether these locations start with a consonant or a vowel, we're always going to use en when they are feminine. Now, we do have some plural geographical locations, and in this case, if we want to say in or to, we're going to use au, which is AUX. So here are some examples. In or to the United States is aux États-Unis. In or to the Netherlands, aux Pays-Bas. And in or to the Philippines, aux Philippines. So it doesn't matter whether what we're dealing with is masculine or feminine. When it's plural, we're going to go ahead and use our AUX. So for example, les États-Unis, that is masculine, United States. Same with les Pays-Bas, Netherlands, that's masculine. And then we have les Philippines, which is feminine plural, but we're going to regardless use au, AUX for all of these because they're plural. Now, the one thing to note is that, for example, when we say in or to the United States, because the United States starts with a vowel, États-Unis, we are going to have liaison. So we are going to hear the pronunciation of the X at the end of O. It's going to sound like a Z. Aux États-Unis. Compare that to aux Pays-Bas and aux Philippines, where the X remains silent. So far we have Je me suis fait virer d'un resto à Los Angeles il y a une semaine. So il y a is an expression that when followed by some sort of time means ago. So il y a une semaine means a week ago. Now in another context, il y a can mean there is or there are. So here's an example. Il y a beaucoup de gens ici. There are a lot of people here. But here, because it's followed by a time, il y a une semaine, it means ago. So a day ago would be il y a un jour. So that brings us again to our sentence, which is Je me suis fait virer d'un resto à Los Angeles il y a une semaine. I got kicked out of a restaurant in Los Angeles a week ago. So let's take a look at that clip one more time.
Je me suis fait virer d'un resto à Los Angeles il y a une semaine.
So that brings us to the end of today's lesson. If you found it helpful, please feel free to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, à la prochaine!